Welcome to Next Gen Tech, Talent and Trends, the space where we explore, with clarity and purpose, the real impact of talent, technology, and artificial intelligence on organizations.
We are Silva, and today we invite you to reflect with us on the decisions shaping the present and future of the IT industry.
Here, we don't just discuss headhunting, AI, or tech consulting. We discuss what truly drives people: the need to grow, adapt, and lead.
This deep dive is for you if you're ready to take control of your career, lead change, or learn something new.
Let's get started. Okay, so we are jumping right into a topic that I think caused a huge amount of frustration and, frankly, anxiety for senior leaders last year.
Absolutely, we have to talk about it.
We really do. We need to talk about why the 2025 executive job search well, it felt utterly impossible for so many people, especially at that director and VP level.
And it's so important to frame this correctly from the start. This wasn't just a tough market. Calling it cyclical layoffs just completely
No.
misses the point.
It does. That phrase suggests, just wait it out, things will bounce back.
Exactly. And that's actually dangerous thinking right now. The executive market fundamentally changed its definition of what value is in 2025. And that change, I believe, is permanent.
So a leader who maybe in 2023 would have been snapped up in weeks based on a solid track record.
A great 15-year track record, suddenly they found themselves completely frozen out.
And to make this really tangible for you, for everyone listening, we want to start with a story. It helps humanize these, abstract market shifts. Let's call him Alejandro. This is a real person, a real story, and his struggle just perfectly captures this whole turmoil.
So set the scene for us. Who is Alejandro?
Okay, so Alejandro is a seasoned technology director. He's based in Monterrey, Mexico, which, as you know, is a massive industrial and economic hub.
Right, a huge center for growth.
Exactly. He's got 15 years of high-level experience. We're talking digital transformation, operational excellence, driving efficiency, all the right keywords.
So on paper, he sounds like the ideal candidate. He's delivered large-scale tech projects. He understands complex regulations. He can lead big, diverse teams.
Everything you'd want. His profile screams strategic agility and, the ability to actually get things done.
And his goal was pretty straightforward for his level, right?
It's totally appropriate. He wanted to secure a strategic C-suite role, maybe a VP of operations, something where he could step in and have an immediate large-scale impact.
And based on historical norms, especially in a high-growth city like Monterey, a search like that should be, 3 months? Maybe 4, if you're being generous.
That's what he thought. That's what everyone thought.
But it wasn't.
No. Instead, his search dragged on for 5 agonizing months. And the critical thing here isn't just how long it took. It's the silence, the lack of friction. It felt like he was just stepping into a thick fog.
And let's be clear about his approach, because this wasn't someone just blasting out resumes.
Not at all. He was incredibly precise. Over those 5 months, he sent only 22 applications.
Wow, okay.
And each one was meticulously tailored. We're talking about deep, deep due diligence. He was reading the company's last 3 earnings reports.
Analyzing the CEO's letters to shareholders.
Exactly. Identifying their specific supply chain problems, and then crafting his entire story to explicitly solve those future issues.
That level of personalization, 22 times. That's weeks and weeks of work. It's not a numbers game. It's a strategic campaign.
It is. And yet the follow-up, even from his own network, people who knew him, liked him, respected his work, it was minimal.
So he'd get the happy to make an introduction, but then nothing.
Pretty much. They offered sympathy. They made these warm introductions that just went nowhere. No real solid leads were coming through. And that silence, it wasn't a simple no. It felt like the system itself was rejecting what looked like perfect competence because it was demanding something else.
Something more.
Something more. And really speaks to the elevated stakes for companies right now. If Alejandro couldn't get traction with that kind of tailored pitch, what does that tell us about the hiring filters?
Well, it tells us 2 huge things about the companies themselves. First, the pool of genuinely open strategic roles is just tiny, minuscule. And when one does open up, the visibility on it is intense. The board is watching, investors are watching.
The whole industry is watching.
The whole industry. But second, and I think this is even more important, the cost of a bad hire, a misaligned executive hire right now. It's devastating.
And when you say devastating, you don't just mean the severance package and the recruiter fee.
Oh, it's so far beyond that. A poor executive hire can derail a multi-year strategic transformation, the very kind of AI-driven transformation we're talking about.
So you could lose a year, 18 months of market advantage.
Easily. You could suffer millions in project overruns. We've even seen public companies lose hundreds of millions in value in a single day when a key transformation leader is let go. So the scrutiny on every single past decision a candidate has made is magnified tenfold.
So companies aren't just looking for competence anymore. They're absolutely terrified of hiring the wrong person.
They are. They're demanding ironclad proof of what we're calling strategic agility, the ability to pivot fast and future-proof leadership. Can you lead a team using technologies that are still being invented?
And that's the silence Alejandro faced. It wasn't ghosting.
No, it was the market demanding he prove right then and there how he planned to survive and thrive in this new era. The core mandate became, show us how your skills specifically address the 2026 mandates for AI and restructuring. If your past success was based on a pre-AI playbook.
It was instantly discounted. That's the key distinction. The market wasn't asking, hey, did you successfully run logistics for 5 years?
No.
It was asking, how are you going to use generative AI to cut our operational footprint by 30% next year without destroying the customer experience? That is a completely different interview.
It's a different job. And if you couldn't answer that question with a concrete ROI-driven plan, you were just seen as an unnecessary risk. And that's the real context for Alejandro's 5-month struggle. The market was already filtering for an AI-accelerated future.
Right, and that sets the stage perfectly for the numbers, for the data, because we have to anchor Alejandro's personal experience in the bigger macroeconomic picture. 2025 was such a strange year of these deep market contradictions.
It really was. And we have to keep emphasizing this. The idea that this was just a simple recessionary pullback is just, it's wrong. This was a structural, permanent change. And it was being enforced through massive cuts to the workforce.
This wasn't about temporarily tightening the belts.
No, this was about redesigning the entire corporate organism for what's coming next.
And the scale is just undeniable. By late 2025, U.S. layoff announcements had surpassed 1 million. That number alone tells you something strategic is happening, not something cyclical.
It's a clear signal. This is restructuring driven explicitly by that mandate for efficiency and for AI augmentation.
The UPS example from last year is maybe the clearest illustration of this kind of permanent operational shift.
It's a perfect case study. In the first 9 months of the year, UPS cut 48,000 positions. And look at where those cuts were. Management and operations.
For very core.
Their core. When a logistics giant makes cuts that deep into the layers responsible for coordination, for routing, for oversight, and they come out and say technology adoption is the driver, that is not a temporary move.
Let's dig into those 48,000 cuts, because we're not just talking about delivery drivers, are we?
Absolutely not. These were often mid-level managers, regional dispatch coordinators, logistics planners. Think about it this way. A regional manager might have overseen 20 supervisors who are manually managing routes and troubleshooting problems.
The human buffer.
The human buffer. Now, with AI-driven routing that can factor in real-time weather, traffic, package priority, you just don't need all those layers of human coordination. The algorithm handles the optimization now.
Which replaces multiple tiers of middle management.
Instantly, the organization gets flatter and the span of control for the remaining senior leaders gets way bigger.
So the cuts were really targeting that operational core logistics, e-commerce, and even the internal tech teams that were supporting older legacy systems.
Exactly. It was all about eliminating redundancy to create these leaner, AI-augmented structures. The traditional duties of a middle manager, routine oversight, pulling together reports, compliance checks, those became the most vulnerable tasks to automate.
So a leader whose entire career was built on excelling at managing those manual processes
Suddenly found their role was redundant.
And this just confirms the anxiety we were seeing in the executive surveys. I think the number was 77% of executives reported that generative AI was already impacting entry-level and, crucially, middle management positions the most.
And that's the entire pipeline for future leadership being disrupted right there. If your job was to be the human who aggregates reports from 10 different systems, well, AI now does that faster, cheaper, and it never gets tired.
So what's left for the managers who remain?
They have to be translators. They have to be ethicists, strategy drivers, not just supervisors.
Now, here's where it gets really complex, what you call the contradiction.
Yeah.
The let-'em growth paradox. So while North American logistics is cutting deep, Mexico is becoming this massive strategic growth hub. Why? Nearshoring.
Companies are moving their manufacturing supply chains closer to the U.S. market. So you'd think, okay, problem solved for executives in the region, right? Lots of new jobs.
But it wasn't that simple.
Not at all. It created huge demand, yes, but for a very, very specific, surgically precise skill set. Nearshoring is incredibly complex. You need leaders who can manage trilingual supply chains, who get the ins and outs of USMCA regulations, who can integrate advanced automation across borders.
So even with this explosive economic growth in Mexico, leaders like Alejandro were still struggling because the demand was only for this very niche profile.
And the data shows this so clearly. The region, especially Mexico, is facing this critical skills shortage at the strategic level. Companies are desperate to build out their nearshoring operations, but 68% of recruiters in Mexico said they were struggling to fill these very specific, tech-driven executive roles.
The local talent pool just wasn't a perfect match.
Often, it lacked that combination of near-native bilingual fluency, the global strategic context, and that deep hands-on familiarity with industrial automation that this new model requires.
Which brings us to this core concept you've identified.
Yeah.
The strategic alignment gap.
This became the ultimate hiring filter. It's not about general competence anymore.
Right.
Companies weren't hiring based on, oh, you had a great career. They were only hiring executives whose track records directly, and I mean directly, correlated with their urgent 2026 mandates. AI integration, efficiency gains, supply chain digitization. If you couldn't prove you had already solved their exact future problems, you just didn't align.
And the application was just gone. It's like having a map of a city from 10 years ago. It's useless in today's construction zone.
It's a perfect analogy. And just to put a final point on the data, what's so interesting is that the overall unemployment rate globally stayed low. It was around 4.8% for the OECD.
So on the surface, the labor market looks stable?
It looks stable. But that stability was hiding this radical surgical instability right at the senior operational level. Companies were ruthlessly cutting leaders they saw as redundant, while at the same time fiercely competing for a tiny number of these hyper-specialized strategic roles.
So the job of an executive has shifted. It's no longer about managing stability.
It's about architecting disruption. And that requires a completely different professional DNA. Which brings us to the most critical internal question every single leader has to be asking themselves right now.
Which is?
Are you actively managing the AI transition inside your organization, or are you passively being managed by the disruption it's causing? Because AI isn't just about making things a little bit better, it is the driver of a fundamental, irreversible redesign of roles.
And that stat you hear all the time, that AI will be a net job creator by 2030. It's reassuring for the long term, maybe.
Maybe, but it's totally irrelevant to the executive who has to make hiring and firing decisions today. Right now, in this restructuring phase, AI is a massive task displacer.
Its immediate impact is on the company's capital structure, right?
Exactly. You look at the IBM data and it's staggering. Executives estimate that 40% of their current workforce will need significant reskilling just because of AI implementation.
40%. That's a massive investment just to stay afloat.
It's huge. So the immediate goal for deploying AI is to reduce the number of humans you need for repeatable, routine tasks. That frees up a vast amount of capital that you can either reinvest in growth or, return to shareholders.
And this directly hits that executive chain of command. When you get rid of those middle layers, the coordinators, the analysts, the director or the VP is no longer managing people in the same way.
They're not. They're managing automated systems, they're managing data pipelines, and they're managing the strategic outcomes those systems produce. This forces them to focus purely on high-level strategy, on governance, and on the ethical deployment of these really powerful, often opaque tools.
They become the final point of accountability if a system fails.
They do. They have to define the guardrails, the audit processes, the exceptions, not just the steps in a manual playbook.
And the Klarna case study is such a perfect cautionary tale about what happens when you prioritize that efficiency over everything else.
It's the best example out there. They were incredibly aggressive in automating.
So let's get into the specifics. What did they do?
Well, between 2022 and 2025, Klarna cut its workforce by nearly 40%. They went from about 5,500 employees down to around 3,000. And a lot of this was done through just not replacing people who left.
Natural attrition and hiring freezes.
Exactly, which is a clear signal that those roles were just being eliminated. The mandate was, if AI can do it, we're not hiring a human.
And from a technical standpoint, Their AI customer service assistant was a huge
The
success.
monumental win. That AI assistant took over the work of more than 850 full-time human agents.
850.
Yeah. I mean, for cost reduction, that's a massive, massive victory. We're talking hundreds of millions saved in salaries and overhead.
But that's where the strategic failure came in.
That's where it all went wrong. The CEO eventually had to come out and admit they went too far. The AI was perfect for simple, repetitive questions, but for the complex, nuanced customer issues,
Like financial regulations or complex loan problems.
or just highly emotional customers, the quality of the service plummeted. They got lower quality output, major service issues. In their race to maximize cost efficiency, they ended up damaging their brand and their customer trust.
And that is the strategic failure. The executives failed to see where human empathy and complex problem solving had to take priority over pure automation. The efficiency gain actually became a brand liability.
Which is why this new mandate for executive AI governance is just non-negotiable. If the executive can't define and enforce the quality standard, the line where a human must intervene, then efficiency isn't just insufficient, it can be destructive.
It's the difference between operational excellence and operational ruin.
It is. Now, contrast that with Accenture's approach during the same time. They also cut staff 11,000 globally, but their messaging, their strategy was completely different.
They were proactive.
They were proactive and strategic. The cuts were explicitly framed as part of an AI-focused restructuring. They weren't just trimming fat, they were making a strategic decision to reinvest in talent that could be retrained in AI implementation and consulting.
So Klarna was cutting roles reactively to save money. Accenture was cutting roles to reinvest that capital into future capabilities that would drive new revenue.
Exactly. Accenture was managing the transition. Klarna was being managed by it. Accenture made sure their remaining leaders and high-potential people had the skills for the future. That's the difference between leadership that just reacts to cost pressure and leadership that architects a future business model.
So the most valuable executives now are the ones who can ensure their company doesn't become the next Klarna.
Yes, they've become expert ethicists and strategic workforce planners because you can't delegate those decisions anymore. The risk is just too high. It's a high-stakes evolution.
Okay, so let's bring all of this, the data, the case studies, back to Alejandro in Monterrey. Let's really break down the filters he was up against during those 5 months.
Right, because it wasn't a lack of experience. It was the impossible specificity of the filters he was facing.
And the biggest one was that strategic alignment gap.
It was the dominant and frankly merciless hurdle. Companies in 2025 were under extreme pressure from their boards and investors to deliver immediate, quantifiable efficiency gains for 2026. Their biggest risks were already clear: volatile supply chains, the need to adopt AI, fierce competition.
So what were they asking for in the interview that his 15 years of solid experience didn't automatically cover?
They didn't want a summary of what his past teams did. They didn't want to hear his general leadership philosophy.
So the standard interview prep was useless.
Pretty much. They needed him to articulate, with data and conviction, exactly how he would deploy AI to solve their specific 2026 business risks. So if the company's main problem was, say, high cross-border inventory latency,
He had to prove he'd already solved that.
he had to prove he had already implemented, say, predictive inventory modeling using machine learning in a previous role. They wanted a detailed battle plan with verifiable evidence. It's like asking for proof of future success.
That just shrinks the pool of qualified candidates down to almost nothing, doesn't it?
To a tiny fraction. And the data backs this up. Employers were reporting that 66% of their new hires weren't even fully prepared for the jobs they were hired for.
66%.
Imagine that. This huge skills mismatch forced them to raise the hiring standards to an insane level, especially for executives. They just couldn't afford that kind of failure rate at the top. The search became excruciatingly detailed.
And then there's the impact of eliminating middle management. How did that change the profile of the executive they needed?
It created this need for a really difficult hybrid profile. Because that buffer of coordinators and analysts is gone, the new director or VP has fewer people for routine delegation.
So they have to be able to zoom in and zoom out.
Constantly. They have to be able to talk to the board about global strategy in the morning and then turn around and troubleshoot an automation deployment schedule with an engineering team in the afternoon.
Wow.
The speed of decision-making has just exploded. If an executive needs 3 layers of reports to figure out why a key metric is down, the company is already falling behind. The new executive has to interface directly with the data, with the automated systems. It's a very hands-on strategic role.
Which is incredibly hard to find in one person.
Very. And this was all magnified in a place like Monterey because of the nearshoring boom. Suddenly, you had global competition for what used to be considered regional roles.
That's a huge point. A job in Monterey was now attracting talent from all over the world.
Exactly. Remote work, combined with the strategic importance of LATAM, meant that a role in Monterey was now on the radar of a recently laid-off tech VP from Silicon Valley or Seattle.
Which must have just sent the benchmark for skills like language fluency through the roof.
Completely. Near-native bilingual fluency stopped being a nice-to-have and became a hard mandatory filter. And cultural agility, the ability to manage these complex, often tense relationships between U.S. corporations and Mexican operational teams, became paramount.
And this explains the layoffs that were happening in the region even while it was growing. They weren't random.
Not at all. They were surgical dismissals. Operations leaders who didn't have that flawless bilingualism or that deep digital supply chain expertise were removed. They simply couldn't manage the transition to this new, globally integrated logistics model. The market had high demand, but it had zero tolerance for a mismatch.
So Alejandro's 5 months. He was essentially trying to break through this hyper-specific, AI-powered filter that only had room for the top 1% of perfectly aligned, future-focused leaders.
It was an efficiency filter applied ruthlessly to human beings. He had the competence, but what the filter was looking for was an exact match for a future strategic necessity. Okay, so now we have to shift entirely to the solution. Understanding the problem is one thing, but the whole mission of this deep dive is to provide the strategic map for winning in 2026.
Right, because it's a tough market, but not an impossible one.
Exactly. The market ahead is one of extreme selectivity, yes, but for leaders who adapt, the rewards and the strategic influence are just unprecedented.
So first, let's look at the economic outlook. Is this super selective hiring model here to stay?
I believe so, yes. Global growth is stable, but it's subdued. The IMF is projecting around 3.1 to 3.3%. And what cautious stability means is that budgets stay tight.
And every new hire has to justify their existence with ROI.
Immediate, demonstrable ROI. Hiring is going to be focused exclusively on roles that directly solve problems of efficiency and future risk.
And the clearest ROI is obviously in AI and automation fluency.
Without question, the demand for professionals who can strategically implement and govern AI and automation is set to surge by 40%. And this is especially relevant for our focus on LATAM. The Mexican tech sector alone is projected to grow by 18% by 2030.
So the opportunity is there.
The opportunity is massive, but the bar to get in is much, much higher. We're talking about roles like industrial automation specialists and systems integration leaders.
Okay, so let's get into the actionable advice. The 3 strategic mandates for any executive who wants to win in this landscape. Let's start with recommendation 1.
Recommendation 1 is all about reskilling, but in a very specific way. We call it mastering the strategic value of AI.
And you're not talking about learning to write prompts in ChatGPT.
No, absolutely not. This is about high-level strategic governance. Leaders need to invest, and I mean aggressively invest, in training for executive AI governance. This means formal courses in AI risk management, compliance frameworks, ethics, system auditing.
So it's not just about knowing the tech. It's about understanding the responsibility that comes with the tech. What kind of certifications would signal that?
You need to look beyond the generic tech badges. Pursue specialized certifications that signal strategic thinking. Maybe it's an advanced cloud certification in AWS or Google Cloud that focuses on data governance and MLOps, or maybe it's a course from a top business school on the risk implications of AI.
You want to certify that you understand the governance layer.
Yes. And we can go right back to the Klarna example to see why that's so critical.
Right.
The Klarna lesson is that pure efficiency without governance is a strategic failure. Your value in 2026 isn't just implementing the AI, it's governing it to preserve service quality and brand reputation. An AI governance certification tells a potential employer that you get that. It transforms you from an implementer into a governor of technology.
You're proving you can manage the systemic risks that the technology itself creates. That's a huge value proposition. Okay, what's recommendation 2?
The executive pitch strategic alignment. This directly tackles the filtering problem that Alejandro faced.
So this is about the resume in the interview.
It's about your entire narrative. Stop listing job duties. Stop summarizing what your team did. That is just baseline competence now. Your entire pitch, your resume, your LinkedIn, your interview answers has to be built around a maximum of 3 quantifiable strategic wins.
And they have to be directly applicable to the target company's current problems.
Immediately applicable. So instead of saying successfully led a large logistics department, you reframe it. You say architected a global predictive inventory system using machine learning that reduced cross-border inventory latency by 22%, saving the company $45 million annually.
That's a quantifiable win tied directly to a 2026 mandate. It connects your past actions to their future pain.
And this completely changes how you network. You can't just ask for a job referral anymore.
So what do you do instead?
You have to pivot from asking for a job to offering executive-level insight. You approach a key contact with a strategic point of view, a POV, on a problem they are facing right now.
So you'd say something like,
I've developed a detailed point of view on mitigating supply chain disruption in your industry using generative AI. I've benchmarked it against your stated 2026 goals. Can we discuss how this might impact your efficiency mandate?
you're showing up to the conversation as a strategic peer, a consultant, not as a job seeker.
You're selling insight and value. A strong POV document shows you understand the context of their business, not just the content of your resume.
That's powerful. Okay, and the third recommendation.
Adapt to the executive filters. This is the practical digital part. We know AI is screening profiles, so your digital footprint has to be meticulously optimized.
Keywords.
All about the keywords. Your LinkedIn headline needs to speak the language of the AI screeners. It should say something like, Global Operations Leader, AI-Driven Transformation, Nearshoring, and LATAM Strategy, Strategic Cost Optimization. These keywords bypass the generic filters.
And then when you get to the actual interview, you have to continue with that data-driven approach.
Interview with data. Do not rely on soft skills or vague stories. Every major statement about your impact has to be backed by a verified metric, a quantifiable outcome. Forget, I led a great team. It has to be, we achieved X% efficiency, audited by Y process, resulting in Z dollars of financial gain.
It seems like the whole job search has become a live demonstration of your strategic intelligence.
It has. The market doesn't reward tenure anymore. It rewards future relevance. The shift in 2025 was structural. Success in 2026 belongs only to those who actively drive that transformation.
And this really explains why top executive search firms have become so essential in this market. They're not just placing people in jobs.
No, they are strategic advisors. They help executives craft this very precise, high-stakes narrative. At this level, something like 75% of positions are never even posted publicly.
They're part of that hidden market.
They are. They're created based on an urgent strategic need that's discussed directly with the board. A firm that has those relationships provides access. They become the crucial link between the future talent and the future mandate of the organization.
It's crystal clear. The only path forward is to become a transformation leader.
That is the mandate for success.
So, to summarize this entire deep dive, the turbulence we saw in 2025, the kind that created Alejandro's job search nightmare, it wasn't a temporary downturn. It was a permanent structural reset, and it was fueled by this relentless mandate for efficiency. The ground has truly shifted.
It has. It's eliminated entire layers of operational oversight, and it's demanding a completely new kind of leader, one who is agile, strategic, and profoundly fluent in the tools of AI and digitization.
And the enduring lesson from cases like Klarna is just so vital. Efficiency that's gained at the expense of human nuance and quality simply is not a sustainable business model.
That's right. Success in 2026 is going to belong to the leaders who pivot from just surviving this disruption to actively driving the transformation with strategic governance and with ethical oversight.
So your mandate is clear. Master the strategic deployment of AI, align your expertise with these global growth centers like Mexico and the rest of LATAM, and above all, demonstrate quantifiable ROI that solves a company's most urgent future risks. This really is the time to invest deeply in your own future-proof value proposition.
And before we wrap up, we want to leave you with a final thought, a question for you to really reflect on based on everything we've discussed today.
Beyond AI fluency, what is the most critical human-centered skill you believe is now non-negotiable for success in senior operations and middle management roles? We really encourage you to mull that over. This was Next Gen Tech, Talent and Trends.
Thank you for joining us in this conversation where knowledge becomes direction.
I hope this episode offered you a useful pause, a boost of inspiration, or even a starting point for what's ahead.
We hope to have left you with ideas, questions, and most importantly, the drive to keep building your path in the world of technology and talent.
Leave us a comment, share this with your team, and help us keep growing the conversation.
Follow us on social media at Sequoia Connect. And remember, the future doesn't just happen. It's built with talent, technology, and purpose.
We are Silva, and we'll catch you in the next deep dive.